And recently, when we heard of a very special kind of memorial that had been neglected, we thought you'd want to know. Hugh has that story.
She's just an old airplane, just a piece of junk to unknowing travelers passing on the highway nearby. Just a hunk of metal sitting on the edge of the Memphis, Tennessee airport, slowly deteriorating. A target for vandals. The home for birds, spiders, and other creatures looking for shelter. She's been hanging around Memphis for 40 years now, ever since World War II. A good argument that, as some of our critics say, Americans have no sense of history. She is called the Memphis Belle. There was a time when Americans were proud of her and the thousands of other B-17 flying fortresses that in the early days of the war made the first daylight low-level bomb runs on Nazi-occupied Europe. She was immortalized, on film at least, by Hollywood director turned combat cameraman William Wyler, who shot much of this film himself. He flew 5 bombing missions on the Memphis Belle at a time when air crews had a higher casualty rate than frontline soldiers.
Bombs away.
Flying at a maximum 25,000 feet with no heat, with no pressurization, with no armor plating, with no fighter escort, poking along at a top speed of only 140 miles an hour, the B-17 made a nice target for German flak and fighters.
There's 4 of them, 1 o'clock high.
They're coming around.
Watch.
More than 4,500 B-17s were lost, each with a crew of 10. For every 3 B-17s that took off from their airfields in England at this point of the war, 1 would never make it back. Wyler chose to film the Memphis Belle because it looked like she would be the first American bomber to complete the magic number of 25 missions. He was right. When she came back from that 25th mission, her battle days were over, and Wyler had a historic documentary that the War Department released to American theaters in a Hollywood-style production. After the war, the documentary, in turn, was partial inspiration for a whole generation of war movies, including the Gregory Peck classic 12 O'Clock High. Combat footage was cut into the movie to add realism to a plot line that dealt with the mental stress of sending young kids up to their deaths day after day. Captain Robert K. Morgan of Asheville, North Carolina, was one of the oldest kids aboard. He was 24. He was the skipper of the Belle and named the plane for his wartime sweetheart from Memphis, Margaret Polk. The romance would not last the war, but the plane would. When America demobilized after the war, the Memphis Belle was rescued from the B-17 scrap heap by some Memphis residents and taken to the town whose name she had been given. So here she sits. The Air Force, which technically still owns her, has been negotiating with Memphis for years to restore and protect her. And several weeks ago, a team from the Air Force Museum went back to Memphis to inspect her. They gave the people of Memphis an ultimatum. Either raise the $500,000 it'll take to care for her properly, or the Air Force will reclaim her.
Pilot's side window has got to be sealed off in some respectable way if they're going to leave it sit out here any longer.
Her old commander, Robert Morgan, came back to see her, too. The man with probably the most emotional attachment to the Memphis Belle. He wants to see her treated right.
This airplane is not just the 25 mission. It stands for all those other 17s and the 4,500 of them that were shot out and that sort of thing, and the whole 8th Air Force B-17. So, you know, that's what it really stands for. And this airplane has made history.
As you sit here in this cockpit now, more than 40 years afterward, what emotions go through your mind, considering the condition this is in? Does it depress you?
Not really. The condition of the airplane doesn't depress me because I can close my eyes and visualize what she really looked like. as I sit in the plane now, as far as I'm concerned, all the fond memories of how she, and I call her she and a lady, how she brought us back from that hell we were going through and saved our lives. As my bombardier said when he came back here in '61 and we stood under, he looked up at her and said, well, she could have been our coffin, but she was our savior.
The question now is, will Memphis save her? A group of private citizens has started an ambitious fund drive for the first time on a national level, and the city has found a secure public spot for her. A spot on city parkland situated on an island in the Mississippi River has been set aside for what is planned as the Memphis Belle Memorial. At a lunch on the island, Morgan saw his second Memphis Belle of the day, his old sweetheart, Miss Polk. They are still close friends. After seeing the site and the city's plans, the Air Force said it would give Memphis one more chance.
Is this a kind of a last chance for the people of Memphis to get it together and save the Belle for themselves?
I guess you could say that. We've been in dialogue off and on for 4 or 5 years, and by their own commitment today, they're willing to go on record as saying that they're going to have the money raised by the 31st of July, or they will offer the airplane back to us.
I feel good about it. I think we've got a long way to go. It's a very different sort of fundraising effort. How many times do people raise money to save an airplane? It's not an ordinary charity, so it's a different kind of challenge.
Since it is, as you say, a national treasure, why should the people of Memphis be able to make the decision as to what becomes of it?
It is the Memphis Belle. It's not the St. Louis Belle. It's been here for 40 years. There's a story that comes from this city. The Memphis Belle herself is from here, and I think it's our duty to take it on.
Yes, she is the Memphis Belle. And maybe she belongs in Memphis, but she belongs to all Americans.
Seeing her sitting here quietly at the end of a runway at the Memphis airport, it's hard to imagine her over those flak-filled skies of Germany more than 40 years ago. But in a way, she's still doing a job. For future Americans, she'll be one of the few remaining physical symbols of the air war over Europe and the sacrifice of American air crews during World War II.
Perhaps that's part of our history future generations should never forget. When American technology and courage helped defeat a great evil. And perhaps the Memphis Belle will help answer a larger question. Do Americans, after all, have a sense of history?
B-17 out of control at 3 o'clock.
Come on, you guys, get out of that plane. Bail out. There's one. He come out of the bomb bay.
Yeah, I see him.
There's a tail gunner coming out.
Watch out for fighters.
Oh, I think we have a sense of history. Maybe we just have to be reminded as in hearing those voices of the past.
I think you're right.
How did you feel when you climbed into that plane?
Maybe a little envy. You know, at
Really?
the time that Weiler footage was shot, I was in the Army. I wasn't a flyer. And I'd like, looking back, I'd like to have been a part of that if I could have been on the Memphis Belle. You know?
Come back safe.
As a matter of fact, when I shook hands with Robert Morgan, who piloted that plane, it felt like I was touching good luck, you know, like a talisman of good luck. Actually, I was touching a lot of skill and courage.
Right, but they did it. It is amazing, isn't it, that they came back safe?
Yeah, it's a great memorial.
It is, and even people who don't remember the exact time will find it fascinating to watch again.
Memphis Belle.